Is there still a mortgage renewal cliff looming in 2025 and 2026? Pre-construction purchases are absolutely in disaster mode. And why do people still think inflation is not going down? All this and more on this episode. But before I start, thank you to everyone who tunes in on a regular basis. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I read all the comments, so give me whatever you have to share, and I'd be happy to review and comment. Is there a mortgage renewal cliff looming in 2025 and 2026? Experts are really concerned, especially economists and bankers, are concerned about the number of mortgage renewals that are taking place next year and in 2026. And most notable are the cohort that are variable rates with fixed payments. Now, there's two types of variable rate products out in the marketplace. One is the variable rate with the fixed payment, and then the variable rate products that have adjustable payments, which means that when Bank of Canada increased rates over the last number of years, those payments adjusted. Whereas there's a significant amount of mortgages where those variable rates had a fixed payment when they first started, and even though rates went up, payments remained the same, which created a significant problem. First of all, there are a few lenders in Canada, and they're big ones, that offered the fixed payment variable, which I think were the shittiest products known to man. CIBC, TD Bank, and BMO, and Royal Bank had these products. Now, Royal Bank had a provision that if it ever fell into a negative amortization situation where the interest rate increased to a level where the fixed payment did not cover the interest component, they had to adjust and make a minimum of $2 payment. So they didn't really fall into the situation of negative amortizations. They just went into the amortization that never changed plan. CIBC, TD, and BMO didn't. And they came into a situation where almost $94 billion in mortgages are sitting in these products. They're not good. They have amortizations of 50, 60, 70, some even 90 years because folks started right at the bottom and when rates shot up, their payments couldn't cover the interest and interest costs added to the principal payment, causing a significant problem. Now, people are saying, well, what's going to happen at renewal time? A lot of these folks have to adjust. And the reality is they will. But here's the good thing. We're looking at rates coming down over time. And we're already seeing the Bank of Canada reduce rates on the overnight lending rate. That's what affects the variable rate mortgages. And by the time some of these mortgages come up for renewal, we will see some interest rate relief and not see the shock that we would expect. Now, there's some stats out there that indicate that variable rate mortgages with fixed payments are going to see an increase to their payment at renewal of about 52.2% in 2025 and a staggering 61.8% in 2026. That's based on rates now. The variable adjustable payment, they will see a 40% increase in 2025 and about a 46% increase in 2026. Not as significant. And those folks in fixed rate mortgages of 5 years, they're only going to see an increase of 22 to 25% respectively in those 2 years. The interesting part of this is that most of those fixed rate clients are going to be looking at rates below the qualifying stress test rate. So I'm not too concerned about them running into a significant problem. You have inflation that's factored into play, but the reality is they were tested. They were put through the grinder to make sure they could still qualify at that 5.25% rate that the stress test was at the time they took these mortgages. So I'm not too worried about them. But as far as the other ones, they're going to see a significant increase. And for those that are in negative amortization, they're going to have to make up the shortfall that they're out of line on their amortization and go back to the original amortization they were in. Now, the government is promoting this Canada Mortgage Charter, which asks banks to be lenient and understanding of people that are in stressful situations and are experiencing difficult payment options at renewal. The reality is this charter is nothing other than the paper. It's worth nothing and doesn't really mean anything to lenders. Lenders are not inclined to follow the charter. That's not what they're governed by. Banks are going to do what's necessary to appease OSFI. And OSFI's had this concern, and they want these lenders to bring these mortgages back in line so that they're paying down principal. And that's one thing they have to do. They have to be able to repay principal in a mortgage as to the terms and contracted clauses of that document. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I do believe the cliff is not going to be as bad as it used to, as firstly noted, because we are going to start seeing rates decrease, and that bodes well and gives some people a sigh of relief that it's not going to be as bad as it once was thought. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll share how things are working out as time goes on. Pre-construction closings this year are an absolute disaster. Purchasers that bought in the peak in 2022 from across GTA, whether you're in Stony Creek, Peel Region, the East End, north of the city, they're all facing the same challenges, and that's appraisal values are not coming in. This is a major problem for folks, especially first-time buyers that don't have any other resources to make up shortfall. So where this is making the biggest impact is people that are buying with about 20% down, or the minimum to get that property on a conventional basis. What people need to realize is that when appraisals are done, they're based on the current market value, and they're done on a comparative basis of what's been selling in the area. And when you do that, we are seeing values erode from the purchase price of these units by 100,000, 200,000, in some cases 300,000 plus on the bigger ticket items. And it's causing unbelievable angst, anxiety, stress for first-time buyers that feel that this dream of home ownership is turning into an absolute nightmare. We've had a few cases just today. In one particular case, a lady who is a first-time buyer just had a kid, was supposed to close this week, unfortunately negotiated an extension for next week, and is $200,000 short on her value. And she asked me if I could get another appraiser to work the value to a higher number. And I told her flat out, it's not happening. I don't like being the bearer of bad news, but the reality is this person is misled, thinking that an appraiser can come up with a higher value than what this thing is actually worth. Now, there are some lenders out there that if you took out their mortgage at the time you bought the home, they would honor that value. And if you don't have that type of arrangement, you're basically shit out of luck. And it's not a fun process to be in. I did ask this person to reach out through her lawyer to contact the builder to see if there's any solutions that they can help them with. They were really eager to move into their home, but it's just a situation where they're about $200,000 short, and who's got 200 grand just lying around to close on a home? It's sad. It's the sign of the times, and I do believe we're going to see more and more of these situations come up. And when they do, it affects two people. It affects the developers because they're expecting to close on these homes. They have purchase agreements. They had anticipated getting funds to pay out their construction facilities if they had them to build these properties. And you have a buyer that doesn't have the resources or the capacity to close on them, which results in lawsuits and a stalemate. One thing that came to mind as these situations kept on mounting is, can the government come in and bail everybody out? I'm just throwing this out, but something tells me that maybe we could see a government bailout where they take on the whole frickin' project and maybe convert them to affordable homes. And maybe that's one of the ways they could start building these things fast, especially affordable homes. We'll see. Maybe they'll get this idea from here, or maybe they're already thinking about it. Who knows? Why do people not believe inflation is coming down? This week, Stats Canada came out with their July inflation number. That's a CPI index. And it came in at 2.5% year over year increase. And everybody is raving about this because it's coming down. What people don't realize is that is a year over year comparison. Okay, so it's not coming down, it's just increasing at a slower rate than it used to be at. And I want to give people this example, okay? And it's important that people understand how this works. When we were in COVID, I probably weighed about 200 pounds, okay? And during COVID, I gained 10%. Let's consider that the inflation rate. So I now weigh 220 pounds in 2021. Then things slowed down. I only increased by 5%. So now I gained 11 pounds and I'm now weighing 231 pounds. The next year, it slows even further to 2.5%. It's going down, which only has me gaining about 8 pounds. The reality is my weight gain has been going down year over year, but I almost weigh 240 pounds. So the reality is prices are still high from where they started, but they're just increasing at a slower rate. So the guy who's been selling me donuts in 2020 is charging me more for those donuts in 2024, but not as much as increase than previous. And here's the sad part. Those donuts are getting smaller because I'm not gaining as much weight. So shrinkflation comes into play. And that's what everybody's starting to talk about next, is how everything is getting smaller and prices are remaining the same, which is another form of inflation, but it's buried in the quantity that you're consuming. So hopefully that makes sense. I figured I'd give you something to chuckle about and give you an understanding of how inflation is calculated. And on the topic of donuts, if you're ever nearby the office, come by for an espresso. Don't always have donuts around. We'll have biscotti, but drop in, say hello. We always have coffee served. And once again, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and share if you can to friends and family that may deem this information useful. If you have comments, I'm always reading them. Love to hear your feedback and any topics you'd like me to cover. And until next time, take care of yourself. Enjoy the rest of the weather.